In this video, we'll be looking at inheritance in Java, where we have a superclass or superparent, and we also have a derived class or derived child. Now, when we want to inherit from a particular class, we use the extends keyword. All right, first, we're going to define a student class. So we're going to use the public class student, and to create this class you simply right click on your project and create new class. And I'm going to define two properties inside student, a name and a couple of test scores. I'm also going to define a constructor. Now remember, the constructor has the same name as the class name, and this is going to be a default constructor because I'm just going to leave it empty. Now I'm going to define a method called getAverage. So we're going to get the average grade for the 3 test scores. And this method will return the sum of each one of the tests, and we will divide the sum by 3 to get the average. We're also going to add a protected property called email, which is going to store the school email address for our student, and we'll make it type string. And protected members can be accessed and modified by any child classes that are inheriting from this parent class. So we're going to create a protected property called department. Inside my default constructor, I'm going to define some test scores. So I'm going to set test 1 to 82, test 2, let's set this one to, let's say 93. And for test 3, let's set it equal to 77. Now I'm going to create a new class. So we go to new, and so we go to create new Java class, and I'm going to call this class Undergrad. And this Undergrad class is going to inherit from our student class. So to inherit, we use the extends keyword. Public class Undergrad extends student. This is the inheritance syntax. Back in our main method, I'm going to define a student object called S1, and I'll set it equal to a new student. And I'm going to do a system.out.println of our student.getAverage method. And this will print the average of all of our test scores. So let's run this program. And the average is 84. Let's set student1.name to Jen Brooks, and we can use the assignment operator here because the name property is a public property. So here we see school email, which is a private property. It's giving us an error and letting us know that it has only private access to the student class. Let's now do a system.print of name and also of department. And we get the information for Jen Brooks. She is in the information tech department and she has an average of 84. Now let's instantiate an undergrad object, and I'll call this S2 and set S2 or student 2 equal to a new undergrad. Now if we do a system.print of our undergrad student and call the getAverage method, we will get the 84 average like we did before. This lets us know that our undergrad student is inheriting the test scores directly from our student class. Now let's set some information for our undergrad student. Let's set the name, and we're going to set this equal to Mark Chang. And let's also set the department. And Mark's department is the communications department. Let's print our undergrad students' information. And like before, we'll print the name, department, and call the getAverage function. And we get our undergrad student information. Let's define a constructor inside our undergrad class. And I am going to set some different values for the test scores. All right, so we'll set test 1 equal to 90. Test 2 will be equal to 80. And you'll see that the IntelliSense is already suggesting the test variables because it is recognizing them from our student parent class. And test 3 is equal to 85. Now let's go back to our main method and run our program. All right, so now our average is actually 85 based on our new test scores. All right, let's just change this to 75. And now we get 81.67. I'm going to define another function inside the student parent class. And this function will set a value for our student email address. We'll define it as public set email. And this will be a void function because it will not be returning anything. And we're passing in a string value to set our email address. And inside the method body, we set this.email equal to email. All right, so remember, before we weren't able to directly access our school email property. In order to set the email property, we will call the setEmail method. And when we pass in an email address as an argument to this method, so let's pass in jenbrooks@gmail.com, and let's add a print statement for our student information. And now we would like to get the email address to print it out. All right, so we have defined a set function for the email address, and it sets the email address. Now we will have to add a get function. So these are our setter and getter functions, otherwise known as accessor and mutator functions. The getter function is our accessor function, and the setter function is our mutator function because it changes or modifies a value. Inside our get email method, this will also be a void function, and we're simply printing out the school email address. So because we're already using a system.out statement inside our getter function, the only thing we'll need to do in our main method is call s1.getEmail. Let's run this. And now we get the email address for Jen Brooks.